The storybook overworld map was mostly linear, but many colorful personalities sprung up along the windy path. These included leaders of other caravans, such as Sol Rocked and Amadati, Gertie, a clavet charlatan, and the mysterious Black Knight. They also reimagined some favorites, such as Stiltskin and Artemisian, the Mughal duo from Final Fantasy IX, as well as the infamous Mog, who helped carry the Crystal Chalice from time to time and willingly volunteered for some extreme makeovers. Although the saga of Crystal Chronicles continued on, the game designers did not. By 2006, and shortly after its merge with Enix, Square acquired the studio, in addition to Taito and a number of other companies. Although the GDS no longer exists, the majority of the creative team that gave birth to Crystal Chronicles, including Kawazu, Idahana, and Tanioka, returned to begin development on 2 new chapters. Ring of Fates is a prequel planned for the DS which expands on the core gameplay of the GameCube original, and follows the story of brother and sister, Yuri and Chilinka. The Chronicles will fill out the Nintendo platform line with the release of its intended sequel, The Crystal Bearers, for the Wii, which will be more of a single-player experience than the other iterations. Adventure was the inception of a franchise, but it was soon rebranded and renamed. Legend was already its own entity, but American Game Boy owners were told a different story. Crystal Chronicles, however, has slowly become an arm of the Final Fantasy tree, rather than an apple that dropped a few feet from it. In April of 2003, Square merged with Enix, and its newly conjoined library of games became an unrivaled force in the role-playing genre. But a couple of years before the unprecedented unity, sometime around the turn of the century, a Square executive and one of the top minds at Disney Studios stepped into an elevator together. When they stepped out, they had already drawn the first line in an animated crossover of unimaginable proportions. The Kingdom Hearts series was produced by Shinji Hashimoto, penned in part by Kazushige Nojima, and composed by Yoko Shimomura. Most of the other design credits fell to Tetsuya Nomura, who directed, designed the characters, and was responsible for the concept. Nomura's task was to create a game in which aspects of familiar Disney characters and worlds meshed with aspects of various Final Fantasy games. Nomura attempted to utilize different Disney locales that all had distinct looks and feels, and merged the backdrop with many Final Fantasy characters he had a hand in creating. These 2 elements were brought together with the aid of an original story by Nomura that followed the plight of 3 children, Sora, Riku, and Kairi. The first Kingdom Hearts was released for the PlayStation 2 in Japan on March 28, 2002. It was slightly retooled and adjusted for its North American release that following September. The original game found Sora, Riku, and Kairi at their home on Destiny Islands. Just as the 3 friends began to yearn for distant lands, the islands were attacked by dark beings known as the Heartless. After being separated from his friends, Sora discovered an artifact called the Keyblade. Soon after, he was joined by emissaries sent from Disney Castle to locate the blade, as well as its wielder. 2 of the most recognizable animated characters in history followed Sora throughout his adventures. Donald Duck took the role of a courtly mage, and Goofy, captain of the Royal Guard. The crew began their trip in Traverse Town, a world unique to Kingdom Hearts. Leon, as well as other Final Fantasy faces, explained that the Heartless were using various keyholes to travel between worlds and capture their hearts. This represented the only direct connection to previous Final Fantasy games. Sora's charge as wielder of the Keyblade was to close the passages and keep the world safe from the Heartless. But he also wanted to rescue Riku and Kairi in the process. This search was thwarted by the magnificent Maleficent and her plan to harness the power of the 7 Princesses of Heart to open the keyhole to Kingdom Hearts, the collective of hearts and a reservoir of knowledge. The game's finale prompted even more questions about the overly analyzed life-pumping organ, and it's taken 2 games since to try and answer them. The first sequel, Chain of Memories, was released for the Game Boy Advance in late 2004 and was one of the first GBA games to incorporate full-motion video. It directly followed the first game, opening with Pluto and later a dark figure pointing Sora, Donald, and Goofy in the direction of Castle Oblivion. The strange edifice was the base of Marluxia, a member of the Shrouded organization, which would later be given the suffix 13. Sora, Donald, and Goofy ascended to the top in hopes of finding Riku and Kairi. As they climbed higher, Sora and friends lost their recent memories, but stirred up old events long forgotten. The levels were projections of Sora's mind, and Chain of Memories introduced a new card-based system of navigating them and interacting with their enemies. Several characters important to the development of the story were also introduced, such as Naminé, a young girl with strange powers over memories, and Diz, an enigma wrapped in bandages. It also featured another unlockable mode, which shed light on Riku's story and his own personal battles. Both flights through the castle revealed an equal amount of secrets and riddles, and put Sora's fate in jeopardy. The third installment would begin with an entirely new protagonist. Kingdom Hearts 2 was released for the PlayStation 2 on December 22, 2005 in Japan, and March 28th of the following year in North America, as the search for Riku and Kairi continued. 2 was very similar to the original, but improved on a number of aspects that were thought lacking. The sequel added a drive bar that allowed for a variety of form switching, as well as more flexibility with summoned characters. Reaction commands were now possible, based on variables unique to certain enemies. It also made a number of improvements to the Gummy Ship system, which Sora and friends used to travel through the Disney universe in both Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2.